Oh, Felicia, where the f*** are we?
In 1994, a broken-down bus named Priscilla departed Sydney's gay enclave, carrying 3 glamorous performers to the rural heart of Australia on the most perilous journey of their lives. And although only 3 of them set out initially, they were soon followed in real life by an entire drag army. All aboard and welcome to Matt Baum's Culture Cruise, where we take a look at queer moments from TV and film that changed the world. This month, we're looking at The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, a movie that's all about searching a continent for family, for home, and for better lip-sync options.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. No more f***ing ABBA.
Thanks to everyone who makes Culture Cruise possible with a pledge of support on Patreon, folks like Jeffrey Blackmer, Nat DeLuca, and Matthew Galloway. If you're enjoying these videos, head over to patreon.com/mattbaum to check out the rewards for backers, like early ad-free access to videos, stickers and books in the mail, and more. By the way, before we get started, this movie contains some slurs and some violence and some cursing, and we're going to be talking about all that stuff as well as what was happening in real life at the time, so just so you're ready for it. We begin in Sydney, Australia, in a dive drag bar where Mitzi Del Bra lip-syncs to an astonishingly on-the-nose song about wishing she had a family. The number is not well received. Before we go any further, it might be helpful to know a bit about Australia's history with drag. Despite the rough treatment, it actually was not the worst place in the world for drag queens. For example, the country was home to a famous drag troupe called Les Girls, which brought drag to mainstream audiences as early as the 1960s. Listen to how these 2 TV hosts explain the concept to viewers.
All the performers on the show tonight in this next segment are gentlemen. They are not ladies. They are gentlemen in every sense of the word. They are men.
Imagine if every episode of Drag Race started like that. One of the stars of Les Girls was a performer named Carlotta, who was not a gentleman. She was a trans woman. She's considered the first openly trans actor in the world to play a trans character when she appeared on Australia's most popular TV show, Number 96, way back in 1973. Number 96 also featured a regular gay character in the early 70s, years before American TV got Jodie on Soap. But even though Australian TV had some surprisingly positive depictions of gay characters through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, audiences were still a bit wary about them. Russell Crowe played a gay man in The Sum of Us the same year Priscilla came out. He stopped by a talk show with a clip from the film and listened to the groans and laughs from the studio audience here.
We've got a clip here from The Sum of Us, and watch the acting technique here. Check Russell's come-to-bed eyes. This is really good acting.
So that's the climate in which Priscilla was made. One indication that the entertainment industry was still not totally ready for queer characters was the difficulty that Priscilla had with casting. The filmmakers approached a ton of actors about appearing in this film, and they all declined, until finally, the filmmakers found a then unknown actor named Hugo Weaving. He'd go on to play Elrond and Agent Smith and the Red Skull, but back in 1994, he was famous for, well, nothing, really. He had just a few minor TV credits when he took the role of Tick after Rupert Everett turned it down. Hugo had never done drag before, but he was willing to learn. At the start of the film, his character, Tick, is feeling burned out, ready for a change. To understand why, you need to know a little about Sydney in the mid-1990s. Sydney was, it still is, one of Australia's unofficial gay epicenters. It's been home to Mardi Gras, basically Australia's Pride Fest, since 1978, and the Darlinghurst neighborhood has a dense concentration of gay bars. But the city was also quite dangerous. Back then, officially, around 4 gay men were killed a year in homophobic attacks, but the actual number is likely much higher. Evidence has emerged recently that in the 80s and 90s there were roving gangs that targeted gay men for murders, and that police just refused to investigate. What's more, because Sydney was such a destination for gay people, the city was hit particularly hard by HIV. So even in Australia's gayest gayborhood, it was still a dark, dangerous time. So it's understandable that Tick is feeling isolated. He's unhappy, he's ready to leave. He just needs an excuse to get out, and that comes in the form of a call from an old friend, asking him to produce an out-of-town drag show. The catch is that the town is Alice Springs, which is rural and remote. It's in the dead center of Australia, about 1,700 miles away. Imagine driving from New York to Denver, except the entire drive is a desert full of animals that want to kill you. Still, that sounds more appealing to Tick than staying in Sydney. He starts rounding up a cast. Tick's first call is to Bernadette, trans woman played by Terrence Stamp. Terrence Stamp would have been familiar to audiences at the time as General Zod from Superman, and to classic movie fans as a particularly hunky Billy Budd. You might also know him for failing to resolve an attack on the sovereignty of Naboo. Bernadette was originally going to be played by Tony Curtis, who started his career in a dress. But Tony had second thoughts about getting back in women's clothes, and Terrence was looking for a challenge.
I believe that actors should continually redefine themselves, because if they don't, they just wind up being parodies of themselves.
Bernadette isn't exactly excited about the gig.
Well, why don't you come with me? I'll need some help, and I think we could both use the break.
You're not wrong. Where is it?
Alice Springs?
You've got to be fucking joking.
They grab one more performer, Adam, aka Felicia, who's always dreamed of climbing Kings Canyon in the Outback in full drag.
That's just what this country needs. A cock in a frock on a rock.
Now, they could have maybe flown to Alice Springs, but flights across Australia were kind of expensive back then, and also then we wouldn't have had a movie. So instead, the girls buy a barely functioning bus with money from Adam's rich mother, who thinks a trip to the Outback might turn him straight. Good luck with that.
I hereby christen this budget Barbie camper Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Hey, that's the name of the movie. We get a quick montage of everyone packing up their drags, in a scene that I imagine is what every queen selected for Drag Race goes through, and they say goodbye to the gayborhood. They make it through the fringe of Sydney suburbs with just some minor squabbling.
No, I'll join this conversation on the proviso that we stop bitching about people, talking about wigs, dresses, bus sizes, penises, drugs, nightclubs on bloody ABBA.
Doesn't give us much to talk about then, does it?
And then, after a few hours, the great, vast desert suddenly stretches out before them, and they realize just what they've gotten themselves into.
Perhaps we should have flown.
Perhaps you should have. Oh well, there's no turning back now. Our heroes stand at the edge of a major Outback landmark, the end of Act 1. It's at this point that our heroes reach their first pit stop of the journey, Broken Hill, a real-life small town. It's about 700 miles from Sydney. That's roughly New York to Charlotte, and the trip's only just started. They decide to greet the town in full drag. In hindsight, a ferociously dangerous decision, given that they don't know how safe this place is. Sure enough, the music stops the moment they walk into a bar, and the only woman there is clearly unhappy to see them.
We've got nothing here for people like you. Nothing.
At which Bernadette takes another incredible risk with an extremely crude sexual joke at the woman's expense that I'm not gonna play here. Fortunately, everyone starts laughing. Soon enough, they're all the best of friends. But then Adam picks a rough way to end the night.
She said her name isn't Bernie. It's Ralph.
Oh no, well, this isn't just some cute little tease. Adam's outing a trans woman by using her old name in a place that's already shown itself to be dangerous. Dead naming, even back then, was a super cruel thing to do, not to mention incredibly threatening and stupid. Now, more than ever, they ought to be sticking together, supporting each other, not going on the attack, because there are bigger threats here that they need to be prepared to face together. After Bernadette makes her displeasure known by beating Adam up, they emerge the next morning to find this. For all the fun they're having, this is a harsh reminder that there are places they are really not welcome.
No matter how tough I think I'm getting, it still hurts.
Remember, when this movie came out, the world was generally not thrilled with queer people. In 1994, the UN's Court of Human Rights ruled that Australia's ban on sodomy violated the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. But it took 3 more years for Australia to fully overturn its sodomy bans. While this movie was being made, Congress passed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and Congress debated a bill that would have cut off funding for schools if they portrayed homosexuality in a positive light. So yeah, it hurts. All of that hurts. At times like these, it's nice to have people you care about nearby to comfort you, but instead, our heroes just keep teasing and needling each other.
One more push, I'm gonna smack his face so hard he'll have to stick his toothbrush up his arse to clean his teeth.
What's the point? I like seeing people get hot-headed, okay? It gives me a kick.
Is it true when you were born the doctor turned around and slapped your mother?
I'll be honest, those are some good reads, but the library's gotta close at some point. They turn off the main road to take a shortcut, and of course, the bus breaks down. They're stranded, they're lost, smartphones haven't been invented, and they've got this message taunting them on the side of the bus. At this point, what does that go home even mean? They left Sydney because it didn't feel like they belonged. They certainly don't have a home in a place like Broken Hill, and with the bus out of order, they can't even go anywhere. So what do while they wait for someone to drive by and save them? They fill the emptiness of the desert with something gay. They rehearse for the show, they paint the bus pink.
It's lavender.
They stand under showers of glitter that seem to materialize wherever they go. They're setting up a sort of remote neighborhood outpost, population 3, in the middle of nowhere. They're making the best home for themselves wherever they can, and stuck out there with nowhere to go, they start growing closer to each other. Eventually, they're found by the people whose land they're actually on. A group of people who are the traditional owners of the land hear the music of their rehearsal. As it turns out, the desert isn't as uninhabited as our heroes thought. After some wary introductions, the two groups mesh quite nicely. They dance till sunrise, and one fun detail here, if you watch closely just as the scene fades out, you can see Terrence Stamp totally eating it on the runway. Don't worry, happens to the best of us. Anyway, the next day, their new friends help them summon a tow truck and a mechanic from a nearby outpost. The mechanic's name is Bob, and his wife Cynthia is, well, let's talk about her.
No, darling, please.
I made chocolate cracker.
Cynthia's portrayed as manic and sex-crazed, and sometimes downright scary. The characters all have a strong negative reaction. Overall, it feels like the movie's really looking down at her. In later interviews, the filmmaker said her character was supposed to be a critique of racist stereotypes. But if there's a critique there, for me at least, it's hard to find. Watching this movie today, this character makes me feel uncomfortable, because I recognize what seem like some problematic tropes. But then again, these tropes aren't about me. I was curious about how people from the queer Filipino community feel about Cynthia, so I reached out and asked. And what I heard from the people I talked to is that, yes, Cynthia's depiction feels tropey and problematic to them, but a lot of those folks told me they were still glad to see her anyway. For one thing, they said, the character has some actual basis in reality. As we later learn, she's a Filipino bride, and in real life, it wasn't uncommon for Australian men, particularly in the military, to marry women from the Philippines, and then when they brought them back to Australia, the life there wasn't necessarily what those women expected. The people I talked to also pointed out that Cynthia has a lot of positive qualities. She's talented, she's strong-willed, she's unhappy with her life, so she takes bold action to change it, ultimately leaving home to discover herself on a road trip, just like the heroes of the movie. That admiration for Cynthia was really not what I expected. But now that I've heard that perspective, I kind of get it. Because there are a lot of tropey, problematic gay characters that I love to watch.
I may not know my flowers, but I know a bitch when I see one. Two things I love to do. It's fight and kiss boys. Come on.
You're so weird.
You have no idea.
You want this, don't you?
No one's carried me since my mama.
Don't worry that pretty blue head of yours. I got a plan.
It's lavender.
I know these characters reinforce some problematic stereotypes, and yet I love them just so much. For me, it feels empowering to see them up on screen. They're bold, they're assertive, they're enjoying themselves and stealing the scene from the protagonists. So I think I can understand the genuine affection for Cynthia. Anyway, for some unfathomable reason, the gang sits down to dinner with Bob and Cynthia. There's a moment of real terror when they hear this line.
Don't get your type out here very often.
Look at that alarm on their faces. That's a line that, depending on context, could be the prelude to a bashing. Your type really echoes the people like you they heard in Broken Hill. But as it turns out, Bob's a fan. When Adam confesses what they do, Bob's into it.
You mean sort of like those, what do they call them? Lay girls? Oh yeah, I've seen them. Way back in Sydney when I was a young bloke. Fantastic, just terrific.
Bob insists that they perform that night at the local bar. Great idea, Bob. Given what happened in Broken Hill, what could possibly go wrong? The gals hit the stage, or actually the bar top, do a wig reveal, some kind of choreography. If I'm being fully honest here, It's just, fine. If I was Michelle Visage, I might point out that their costumes are working harder than they are. The audience is not into it, and things could have turned ugly. But then Cynthia shows up. Turns out she's a performer too, and she saves the moment by giving the crowd what they want. Then Bob physically grabs her and drags her away. Oop, again, the movie's treatment of her is pretty dehumanizing. The next day, Cynthia's fed up. She packs a car, she drives away, never to be seen again. Well, actually, she is seen once more. The actress who played her, Julia Cortez, has one other film role.
I thought you said this guy was the master of disaster. He's nothing but a slime-infested jelly donut.
The weirdest thing about her playing Rita Repulsa in 1995's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie is that she isn't even the most surprising casting choice in the film. That would be Paul Freeman as Ivan Ooze, the guy who played the bad archaeologist from Indiana Jones. Anyway, after shrugging off Cynthia's departure, Bob says that he can fix the engine temporarily, but he can't guarantee it'll make it all the way to Alice Springs unless he comes with them. He's in a somewhat similar situation to the Queens. What family he had was dysfunctional. He's not really tied down to the place that was supposed to be his home, and he's desperately in need of a change. So along he goes for the ride, and sparks start to fly.
And that's the power steering pump. And that's the radiator fan.
How interesting.
Simple.
Next stop on the drive is Coober Pedy, a mining town that is the roughest pit stop yet. This is another real-life location. It's home to opal mines and a landscape littered with massive open holes in the earth that with one wrong step could kill you. Bob warns him to stay inside.
This is a pretty tough little town. They get up in the morning, they go down a hole, they blow things up, and they come up again. That about sums things up.
Oh, fabulous.
But Adam wants to cause trouble. He gets into face and heads out.
Hello. I'm new in town.
No kidding.
It's all fun for him until someone spots his hairy arm and an angry mob gives chase. Meanwhile, Tick and Bernadette enjoy a little time together. Their conversation turns to family.
Do you think an old queen's capable of raising a child?
Well, Elizabeth did a pretty good job. Prince Charles is a wonderful boy.
What happens if they turn out like Adam?
You stuff them back in and ask for a refund.
Too late for that now. They see Adam being chased, and we get another chilling scene. Given the fact that gay men were frequently murdered around this time, even in Australia's big cities, it seems likely this angry gang could actually kill Adam. But then Bernadette intervenes. The bad guys try to taunt her.
Come on, Bernadette. Come and fuck me. Come and fuck me.
Fuck me. There. Now you're fucked.
They escape with their lives, but this experience really seems to break Adam. It prompts some of the most touching dialogue of the film. Bernadette comforts Adam. It's hard to imagine her taking such a tender approach at the start of their journey. It wasn't that long ago that she was the one beating him. But now they've become less like strangers pissing each other off, and more like family. Pissing each other off, sure, but also looking out for each other.
Don't let it drag you down. Let it toughen you up. I can only fight because I've learned to.
And for the first time in the movie, someone reflects on what they had back in Sydney.
We all sit around mindlessly slagging off that vile stinkhole of a city. But in its own strange way, it takes care of us.
This really gets to the heart of the movie, I think. Neighborhoods protect us, sure, but that protection doesn't come from the rainbow crosswalks. It comes from the friends and family who live there. A place doesn't become a home because of where it is. It becomes home because of who's there. In the words of another film directed by someone from this part of the world,
Asgard's not a place, it's a people.
Queer people make home wherever they go, when they go there together. Even when it's just 3 queer people on a lavender bus. Battered, bruised, with an engine on the verge of a nervous breakdown, the gang finally limps to their destination in Alice Springs. Now, at last, it's time for the show they drove all this way for, and this is one of my favorite scenes in any movie because it's infused with pride. Not just queer pride, but also a funny sort of Australian pride. Their costumes here are all extravagant tributes to Australia. First, they're dressed as Grevillea, a native flower, then they're emus, a native bird, then they're frilled-neck lizards, a native reptile, then finally, the Sydney Opera House, a symbol of where they come from. It's a really charming touch that the movie pays this little tribute, especially with the Aboriginal-inspired artwork behind them. It's a signal that they're a part of Australia, and Australia's a part of them. Now that they've made it to Alice Springs for a few weeks of shows, families really starting to gel for them. First, there's the surprise revelation that Tick had a wife and son out here all along, and the wife wants him to take custody of the kid. Tick's scared that his son won't accept him, but...
Will you have a boyfriend when we get back to Sydney?
Maybe.
That's good.
Meanwhile, Bernadette's growing closer to Bob, and Adam finally gets to climb that rock in a frock.
So what now? I think I want to go home.
Me too. Well then, let's finish the shows and go home.
There's that word again. Home. By now, home means something different for them. For Adam and Tick, it's back to Sydney. This time with a kid to look after. For Bernadette, it means staying in Alice Springs with Bob, who's taken a job at the resort. The place that once made her say, "You've got to be fucking joking," is now home for her.
You sure?
No, I'm not sure. But I'll never know unless I give it a shot.
With that, Adam and Tick and the kid hit the road back to Sydney, backtracking through the country that nearly killed them multiple times. Could they really not fly back, at least? At any rate, our heroes aren't the only ones changed by this trip. When this movie came out, it was a modest financial success, but culturally, it had a huge impact. It spawned a long-running Priscilla tribute show at the Imperial Hotel in Sydney, where the beginning and end of the movie takes place. There are also traveling Priscilla tribute shows that toured the country, often visiting the same kind of isolated, remote towns that are featured in the film. Those shows were a huge hit. Some of them are still running today. Australia just totally embraced this film. The Australian government even named it one of the most enduring Australian films of all time. In fact, this movie was so beloved that after it paid tribute to Australia, 6 years later, Australia paid tribute to it at the Sydney Olympics. A contingent of drag queens appeared in the closing ceremonies, and Kylie Minogue performed one of the ABBA songs from the film. Of course, the movie's been adapted into a musical that plays all over the world, but I think the most beautiful impact can be found in the town of Broken Hill, where the characters first stopped off. Today, Broken Hill's home to the annual Broken Heel Drag Festival. This tiny little town of 17,000 that was a stand-in for hostility and intolerance is now home to a nationally renowned drag fest. The whole town dressing up for a parade past the hotel where the characters stayed. Imagine what that means for queer people living in remote areas. To know that those big city neighborhoods are there if you need them, but if you want to stay put in Broken Hill, if that's where family is for you, then you can make a home there too. In the final shot of the film, we see they've returned triumphant to Sydney and that they're now a family in a way that they weren't before, both chosen and biological. And with everyone cheering, surrounded by family and friends, Tick finally puts a name to the place he was once so eager to leave.
Thank you! It's good to be home!
Land ho! Thanks for cruising along with us, and thanks to everyone who makes Culture Cruise possible with the pledge of support on Patreon. If you're enjoying Culture Cruise, head over to patreon.com/mattbaum to support the show and get access to some backer rewards. Also, thanks to everyone who helped with research for this video: Jonathan Duffy, Andrew Mercado, Albie Pree, and Alexa Manila. And now, if you'll excuse me, I think I have a Joey in my pouch.
Whoa!